was just so cool to just go out there and make all these relationships with all these like-minded punk rock kids and be like this and going back home like, all right, cool. There really are people out there. It's just unfortunately not where we're growing up.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Yermomlluvus, that is the way that you pronounce the name if you're looking at the episode and thinking, what the fuck is this say? That's how you say the band name. They were a band that formed in the late 90s in Central Jersey, not South Jersey, as we talk about, where they say Taylor Ham wrong. We also talk about that. They were a pop-punk band from the Trenton area, and they used to play with bands like Shower with Goats, Boxcar, Speed Bump. Who else? They used to play with us in the northern Jersey area with like Humble Beginnings and my band Lanemeyer. And let's see who else. High Strung and so many bands. You can go to the NJPP archives to see every single band that came out of New Jersey and listen to all their demos. There is literally nothing online about Yermomlluvus. There's no write-up anywhere. The only thing I can find is a YouTube link for their song that's on the Trash the CD compilation. It's for the song You Never Will. And real quick, if you're a fan of Boxcar, you will easily hear in the chorus the total Boxcar ripoff there. For the song, I forget what it's called, but I think it's like, but what the fuck am I to do? Sorry to throw you on the spot, Chris, but that completely rips off that song. Just saying that out of love. I got connected to him because of Big Dave, who used to travel with them and the Boxcar Kids all the time back in the late 90s. And I asked him if he wanted to talk about the good old days, and Chris, not Big Dave. Big Dave won't do an interview, even though he should. Chris said, yes, I would like to talk about those days. And I said, that sounds lovely. So I got him on the Skype, and this is what we talk about. Taylor Ham, Congress of Cow, the Trash This CD compilation, finding friends in high school based on their punk rock look, who is the primary songwriter of the band, Boxcar, Link 80, his band with the Joe Pulito, and a ton more. Check out his band Downbound City if you like that nice mix of punk and a little bit of country. I hear that in there. It's really fucking solid. So just click on the link in the bio or look up Downbound, it's one word, City is the other word. Look that up on Spotify and start playing and get them all those royalties so they can pay rent. Before we jump in, 3 ways to support the podcast. 1, go to patreon.com/thiswasthescene. You can sign up for $1 a month. That's $12 a year. That's $120 over 10 years. So you think about $12 a month. That equates to, if you were to give up 3.5 Starbucks coffees this year, give up them. I think I've been saying it wrong this whole time. So if you decide that you don't want 3.5 cups of Starbucks coffee this year, you can take that money and you can give it to the podcast. 2, you can donate one time by clicking the purple button on the top of the website on thiswasthescene.com. 3, you can buy merch on thiswasthescene.com. There's also some throwback merch on there. I haven't really got a lot of bands that they're doing the throwback merch. But I've got True Zero, Jill, I've got a Boxcar shirt, I got some Lanemeyer stuff up there. My favorite shirt is the one that says Lanemeyer is better than Humble Beginnings. You can buy that. I got a mug that just says Zines, but it's in the Kinko's font. I thought that was really clever that I came up with that. And there's just like, This Was the Scene merch, where it's like a picture of New Jersey. It says This Was the Scene. I was pretty proud of that one. That one sells pretty decently. I mean, decently. It's like one every 2 months. So that's pretty decent. So you should go buy that. That means that not a lot of people have that shirt. And you'll be the coolest person in your house since you're not allowed to leave that. Keep on the lookout on the YouTube channel for youtube.com/thiswasthescene. I have another animated short coming up. This one is going to be about the clip from the Some Kid episode, and I'm pretty excited about it. I have it about 70% animated, and I'm going to launch that soon, so keep a lookout. And on the Instagram, you can follow me there, and This Was the Scene, or you can follow me on Facebook. That's all I got to say. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. What's up, man?
Nothing much, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm getting ready to talk about some fucking punk rock from 20 years ago.
Long time ago.
I know. So you're down in Texas, eh?
I am, Dallas, Texas. Yes, sir. Now, are you still in Jersey, Doyle?
No, man, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina now.
Yeah, great town. Definitely been there. Love it. Got some friends that still live there, and my job, we have a big one of our big what do you call it is down there in Raleigh. So got a lot of friends that have moved down there as well from here.
Wait, you job at what, the convention center? Like conferences and stuff?
No, no, I work in finance, man. I'm a stockbroker now, so
Sell out.
yeah, little fucking punk rocker stockbroker. But yeah, it's pretty funny now when you walk into like a large financial firm and you're wearing like a strung out hoodie and people are like, "What the hell is this 40-year-old guy wearing?" I'm like, "Yeah, wearing stuff like that and you know like a Menzinger's t-shirt." They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Never mind. Let's not even get into it. It's not pop music. It's punk rock." So
Did you ever know? I don't think you would have because you were in South Jersey or Central Jersey. I consider it
right,
South Jersey,
Central,
but you probably consider it Central.
Central. That is Central
Yeah, you know
Jersey,
who says
Chris.
that? People from Central Jersey. Who
Exactly. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's just like people from where you're from call it Taylor ham. It's pork roll.
It's fucking
See,
Taylor
we grew up
Ham.
in. It's definitely pork
Because
roll.
you're bullshitting wrong. Did you actually two things there? One, because we're on that topic. Do you know who Chris Gethard is?
Yes, yes, I do.
Have you heard his interview on this podcast?
I haven't heard his one on here. No, no. I know that Joe Pulito, who is a good friend of mine and bandmate, former bandmate. I know he just did something with him recently, like recorded like a Weston song or something. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I didn't get a chance to listen to his episode on here yet. No.
Listen to it.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, and I think Gethard's kind of on this Jersey revival path because he came on. First of all, I mean the guy is just like successful and doing like his comedy, and he
Yeah.
had his TV show, he's got his podcast which he's had for a really long time, and then he came on to mine where he has this a crazy fucking story that he talks about, but and then he's in that new Action Park video or movie that's on HBO that talks about Action Park
Yeah.
called Class Action
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
And then, but here's the Taylor Ham part, is that he has a comedy album out, and the first track talks about how he from North Jersey. He's like, because this, I think the whole thing was shot in South Jersey, and he's like, he goes, first of all, it's fucking Taylor Ham, and he starts it like that.
Well,
It's
he's wrong.
crazy.
He's wrong, and I could say this though because we are probably the only band from that time, minus a couple of the members of Boxcar who were from Trenton proper. Like we grew up in the inner city where pork roll was invented, and we can actually get it down here in Texas now, and it says Taylor, which is the company, which is not the best. It's
Right.
Cases is the best, but it says Taylor pork roll on the packaging. So I think that kills that whole debate right there. You tell Chris Gethard I said that, by
I will tell Gethard that.
the way.
And like he gives a
That's pretty
fucking
awesome,
shit.
though. You have to listen to his. Yeah, I kind of like. I'll be honest with you. I never really knew who he was until a couple of people like started turning me on to him, like my buddy Dave LoCameron and Big Dave, and he was telling me, "Oh, check this guy out, man. Check this guy out. He's super funny, and he was super into the scene back in the day." And I was like, "Oh, I will." And so some of the stuff, like, yes, it's great, man. I'm really digging
Listen,
this.
listen to the episode. It's fucking. I had no idea who he was until we started talking, and then about 30 minutes before we started talking, I was just like briefly just kind of opening up some browser windows and shit or I started opening up some websites with his information, and I was like, this guy's done a lot of shit, and his story is fucking amazing because it's based on the Jersey's like going to shows back then, but he did this crazy shit, and it was like 20 years later. He's like, I basically got to get this off my chest, and that's the whole episode. So I'll leave it at that.
That's
All right,
awesome. I'm gonna
so
check that out.
yeah, so fuck everyone else. So let's talk about you, buddy. Let's
Yeah, man.
let's fucking dive into it. And actually, there was another thing I wanted to ask. Oh yeah, so John Cheese, he's the guy that you probably wouldn't have known because being from Central Jersey, but he's a realtor up in Northern Jersey, and I interviewed him because he was part of like the Morris County youth crew or adult crew, and he used to roadie for like Piebald and all these people. But he's a realtor, and he has a T-shirt that he made where he basically was like, it's like he plays in a punk band now, and it's a picture of him just singing on his knees or something, and it's like some joke about him being a realtor and like, but being punk rock or something like that. So it's like made me think of that when you're talking about you wearing all these, punk rock shirts and you're going to these financial meetings.
Yeah, yeah,
That was really it. It was a very long-winded way.
that's pretty funny. Yeah, it's just definitely how it is.
So everyone listening, so Chris here, we used to play a bunch of shows with you guys way back, obviously 20
Definitely.
years ago when this whole podcast was like focused on. And I mean, I'm thinking about playing in Bordentown. I've talked about this so many times, and I've even said that I've talked about it so many times. But there was the Boxcar show with Shower with Goats, Boxcar, Bigwig, where I first saw them. Uh, Speed Bump played. We were Congress of Cow at the time, and I think Humble Beginnings was with us. Now that I've told the story for 100 and fucking whatever episodes. And do you remember this show? It was in the Pavilion in Bordentown.
Was it indoors or I remember the
It was
first
outdoors.
time I've ever outdoor see that was Heightstown actually.
Heightstown.
That was the Heightstown American Legion. I'll never forget.
No, no,
Uh,
no, no. It wasn't American Legion. It was outdoors. It was a pavilion.
yeah, it was a pavilion outdoors of the Legion there, and it's Heights. My sister lives there now in
Oh,
Heightstown. It's very weird,
okay.
but I'll never forget. Yeah, because that was like one of the first shows I ever like went to or played. I think we played that as well, and I saw now. See, I'm confused now because I never knew. I remember Congress account, but I thought they were different from Lanemeyer. No, were they two different bands or one different? I thought they were younger kids than you guys. Was that you guys?
So Congress of Cow was me and Barker, who was the other singer, and then we had a different drummer, Jeff, who ended up going to the Modesty panel after us. Do you remember that band? It was with Jay from the Jerkoffs and
I don't think I
Granick.
remember those
You know
guys.
Granick though, right? You
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
him?
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely remember Brian. Yeah, definitely remember Brian. I remember those guys. Yeah, I felt like Conquest of Cow were younger, like younger than us, and I remember playing with them. And I remember playing. I thought I remember playing with them and Lane Meyer on like the same show or something. And there were two. Did you guys go off and start Lane Meyer, and they just went on with other people, or am I just making stuff up here?
Me and Chris were, it was like me and Chris were in Congress of Cow. We had a drummer and then a guitar player, and then I kicked out Andy, and then we were a three piece, and then Jeff left, and then we got Alan from Flipside Records, and then Sean, who was their drummer for Lanemar the whole time, and that's what we changed the name to Lanemar because they were like, we don't really want to be called Congress of Cow, we want to be called Lanemar, or this new name in which we came up with Lanemar. So that was really it. That was like
I
the
definitely remember
change.
that. I definitely remember that gig because that was the first time that I ever saw you guys in Humble Beginnings, and just thinking like, man, these guys are the same age as us, and they're really good. They're really good. It's like really good because we grew up in the inner city. Me and Anthony Torres and Mike the drummer, and punk rock. I grew up listening to punk rock because I had a lot of older friends. Being 41, and like I remember listening to it when I was young, like 9 or 10. And my older neighbors like listening to like Circle Jerks and stuff like that. And then being from the inner city, I started listening to like a lot of hip hop growing up. And then 94 hit, and all these bands came out again, and punk rock was a thing again. I was just like, oh my god, I love this. And I'll never forget the first show, like local show I went to, was not far from us in Trenton, and it was I don't know if you remember Inspector Seven.
Yeah, I know of
Yeah,
Inspector Seven. I don't remember. They were a ska band, right? Were
yeah,
they?
total,
Yeah.
total, like, yep, correct. And it was Inspector Seven, Degradation. Do you remember Degradation?
That's a name I do not know. I have no idea who that is.
Fid went on to do a ton of other like New Brunswick type bands, definitely in some good stuff, but that was like his first band. I'd have to talk to Joe. You definitely know some of his bands after that, but it was Degradation and Boxcar, of course. And I saw, that's where we first kind of like linked up and started like a 25-year friendship with those guys. I've been friends with them. I've been in bands afterwards. I played with not Derek. I played with Brendan. Brendan from Boxcar. Me and him had a band together, and but that was the first time I ever went to like a local show, and I was like blown away. I was like, holy shit, man, I want to do this.
So okay, so you kind of fast forwarded there, but you actually just skimmed over the first question, which I always ask, which is like how you got into music. So we just got into that. So wait, how old are you though? Okay, so that's like the structure. It's like go back in time, what got you into music, what got you into the scene, playing in shows, talk about shows, any crazy stories. So, but you just kind of brushed over the bands that you got into. So let's kind of like skip like let's kind of just we already went through that, but like let's go back through again. Like when you got into like the punk music, like what was the first band again? You said like was it going to that Inspector Seven show, or was
It
it
was definitely
right after?
definitely going to the Inspector Seven show, and that's what made me like want to go to more like local, like, oh my God, this is thing. This is not just like bands like Green Day and the Offspring and all these bands that were blown up big, but there was kids like my age, a little older, doing this, and then started playing, and that's how we ended up being at the Heightstown Legion, and then seeing you guys and a lot of you North Jersey pop punk bands, and just being like, holy shit, man, this is a thing. This is like all these guys, and these guys are really fucking good. Like we had probably just started playing our instruments like a year before that, could barely play, and then here we are seeing kids that were like 17 and 18 years old, like seniors in high school or just out of high school, humble beginnings. Like they were, phenomenal. And they were so good. Seeing them, and even like Lane Meyer, dude, seeing you guys, like these bands that I listened to forever afterwards. You know what I mean? Great bands growing up.
Well, real quick, like, okay, so what got you to that first show? Was it a friend? Like, how the fuck did you get there?
Like I said, man, we just started listening to punk rock. Started becoming a thing again. Like when I got to about like being like a freshman or sophomore in high school, I started listening to more like rock tinged music again, like little industrial punk and stuff like
Oh yeah,
that.
that
And
was
like,
a
like
huge
yeah,
industrialist. Yeah.
yeah. So '94 came around, and City Gardens was still kind of a thing, but we were still young, like 15 years old. And then Dookie came out, and then me and Dave and Torres, who was the bass player in Yermomlluvus, we just started going to shows, man, like going to these shows, and then seeing like, oh man, I started seeing these flyers for local shows, like, oh, that's right here. Oh, hey, that's an American Legion. So I started going to local shows and seeing like Navalistic Death, who is now Crypt Keeper 5, who are still doing their thing 20-something years later. Just kind of doing it from there, man. Just like word of mouth. You know how it was back then, Doyle. Just like picking up punk zines in Princeton Record Exchange, going to Record Exchange and seeing like like flyers from all over New Jersey of all
Yeah.
these pop punk bands, like hardcore shows. Seeing Saves the Day and stuff like that was wild.
What was like? I'm just kind of jumping around here, but like you said, zines. Like, was there a specific South, like Central Jersey, it was South Jersey, Central Jersey zine that you remember? Because I mean, in North Jersey, we had Annoyance, we had Annoying Girl, there was Just in Time for Nothing, which was Brian Malloy. Who the fucking else do we have? There was like some one-offs. It was like Braceface, which was Evan, who was in Steel Train. It was in Random Task and eventually in Steel Train. Like, what was there like? What was like the Central Jersey zines? Do you remember?
I couldn't really put my finger on saying like, hey, there was one that was like, that kind of stuck, that was timeless, that stuck around, and had like multiple. I just remember like picking up these things. You remember how I was back then, like just kind of like Xerox copies, black and white, stapled together, and you're like, oh, this is great, man. Kids just writing up reviews and stuff and talking about bands. I couldn't really put. I think my friend Molly had a zine. I could be wrong. That she did one, but I think if anyone would have done it, would have been her back in the Central Jersey scene there then. But she did the Trash This compilation on it. You remember that Trash This compilation?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, because when you said Molly, I was like, I know that name. I remember that name.
I mean, if anyone did think, she was super cool. She was always throwing shows and stuff and having us on. And then there was two young girls from Florence area that threw a lot of stuff. In like I want to say it was Burlington, the Burlington Elks Lodge. Did you guys ever play shows there back in the day? Or?
I don't think so. We played what the fuck? No, I don't think we. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure there's like a flyer up. Have you been to the NJPP Archives website? Joe Pulito site?
I've had, yeah, of course, man. Definitely
Um,
supposed to check it out.
I think
Pretty sweet.
that'll probably have the answer. But like I remember the only thing I remember in South or God damn it, Central Jersey. I remember playing at obviously the Heightstown American Legion, but I remember playing at the Firehouse. God damn it,
Yes,
what was the firehouse there?
it
The
was.
There's a video like Steve with Goats, like he has that. It's a video on YouTube where it's us, Humble, and then the Shower with Goats playing. But there's this whole video of him walking around the outside of that firehouse, the fire
What was
station.
the firehouse called? I'm just gonna come back. I know it was the kid Dave Go Bauer from Go Real Slow. I think
Oh yeah, go
his
wrestling.
dad or his uncle was in the fire department. It wasn't Cheesequake. We played in Cheesequake a lot. And
I thought it was Heightstown.
no, that the one you're talking about is Bordentown. It was called the
Bordentown, yes.
what's the firehouse? I remember seeing Humble Beginnings open up for like MXPX and the Get Up Kids there in Homegrown. That was pretty sick. But it was oh my god,
I know.
age is a bitch, Doyle. Age is a bitch because I would, it's right on like my tongue and I just can't spit it out. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Here's the funniest thing about this fucking doing this thing. So I've been doing this for about 2.5 years, and I've told stories so many times where when I'm like editing in this and I'm listening to it again, I'm like, oh my God, I think that I talked about this like 10 episodes ago, which was like
Yeah.
2 to 4 months in that time period. And I'm forgetting shit, but I can remember crap that was fucking 20 years ago, like more specifically, well, in my mind specific, but I'm forgetting all the things that I talked about, which is so hilarious about this podcast where I'm like, I'm totally showing my age. Where I'm like, I've had these conversations over and over again. I'm remembering the same thing and I'm forgetting it in one episode, but I'm remembering it in another episode.
That's too funny,
It's
man.
fucked.
I'm gonna get because this is gonna drive me nuts. As I'm talking to you, I am texting Big Dave, and he'll know.
Yeah, Big Dave definitely. I asked him to be on it because he went to so many shows. He was always with you guys.
Oh yeah, man. He was kind of like our guy. You know, I guess the closest thing at 18 you can have to a manager. Like, we just wanted to play. And he was like, I'm gonna go out there and get you guys shows, and that's what he would do. And he was just like he was super outgoing. People loved him. He was just like, here, I got these guys. We went and recorded a demo, and he passed it around and go from there. And then yeah, and that's how we picked up shows back in the day. And it was kind of odd, like you said, being in Central Jersey. We weren't a part of like you guys up there. Kind of a little envious because you guys were all like really good and had a really sick scene up there. And back then, even then, like we were more kind of like fluent to like the North Jersey scene. Like we played a few South Jersey gigs and always went over well. But I couldn't even tell you, Doyle, like till this day, like I can name off like a decent amount of like North Jersey, like from the New Jersey pop punk scene, but I couldn't tell you too many bands that came from south of Trenton, or Bordentown area coming up and playing with them, like bands we played with.
Well, let's like kind of go in that. Let's kind of go in that chronological order for a second, then, because I'm kind of jumping around, but I love this because all this like nostalgia is like kind of popping up, which again I've probably answered in so many episodes. How did the band officially form? So you started going to shows, started going to local shows. When is when did you like turn to the rest of the guys and be like, hey man, like let's start our own fucking thing?
So like I said, I started listening to punk again, like '94. I was like 15. My dad was always a musician, played guitar. When I started seeing all these punk bands, seeing Green Day, started listening to Jawbreaker. I'm just thinking like, man, I want to do that. So I went to my dad as a young kid, like 15 years old. I said, Dad, I want a guitar. So I got like an acoustic guitar first. So went to my father, asked him for a guitar. I was like 15 years old. I was like, Dad, I want a guitar for Christmas. I want to learn how to play. For him, he was stoked. He was like, oh, my son wants to play a guitar like me. Awesome. So went on, got me like I still have it till this day, a little Epiphone, little dreadnought like acoustic guitar. I loved it, and I was like, Dad, I don't want to take lessons. Just show me how to put my hands on the guitar and what it is, and give me an idea. So he kind of started teaching me like bar chords, right? So from there, I'm like, yeah, I love this, love this. Then just sitting around, hanging out, playing over like the next year and a half, only really knowing bar chords and such like that, and then hanging out with Torres. He's like, yeah, we all listen to the same music. Me and him were like kind of like the what do you call behind that? Like we're like we should start a band. We all went to Catholic school because we grew up in the inner city.
Ew.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it was rough. Yeah, man. So we were just talking, and Mike, who was our drummer, who I'd known from like playing baseball with. I didn't even know he played drums, and someone was like, it's coming up on like the last 2 months of like our senior year in high school, and someone was like, "Yo, Mike Chakowski plays drums." I'm like, "Really?" I didn't know. We played baseball together, so hit him up. I'm like, "Hey, Mike," one day in the hallway, "Hey, Mike, me and Torres are playing." Torres picked up a bass kind of the same way. He just started doing that and said, "Hey, we want to start a band with you." And funny story, he's like, "Yeah, I'm totally down." Right? Funny story. It's like 2 or 3 months out from graduating, Mike gets um, mono. And we don't see him for like 4 months, right? So we're like, shit, what happened to this guy? Gets better. Started jamming. I just moved out of the inner city to the suburbs, moving on up, and had a little garage detached from our new home. And I was like, yeah, man, bring your drum set by, and that's kind of like how that started. Like I said, after really listening to these bands and attending some of these local shows before I was in a band, and that was it, man. And wrote some songs and
So when you like started that shit, man, what was your I don't know, like some people start like I talked to like Ian from fucking Newfound Glory. He was just on a fucking mission to just make a career out of this. And some people, that's their focus. Like, were you just, why did you want to play in a band? Why did you want to start playing shows?
That's a good question, man. I was like super like when I saw like Billy Joe then was like and still is. I love him. When I saw him doing what he was doing, I'm like, I want to be that guy. You know what I mean? Just something about the songs and the lyrics, the energy, man, just seeing that, and it just kind of grabbed me because it was so, like I said, being from where I'm from, like, rock and roll music, punk rock wasn't kind of like prevalent in the inner city. You know what I mean? Like we didn't really like. I knew it growing up because my old neighbors, and then it kind of fell off, and that was like in the early '80s. But then hearing like this whole resurgence of like this pop punk, you know what I mean? Like this music that had this energy, but was super catchy. Something about it, man, was just like, oh my god, I want
Well,
to do that.
did you see
Like,
it as a way to just be in front of a crowd? Because when so I can kind of like, I'm kind of like leaning, not really leading, but like kind of a reference point of why I ask on why I'm asking. Like for me personally, when I grew up watching like Bon Jovi and MTV bands and stuff, and for some reason I was like, I don't want to be the people in the crowd watching this shit. I want to be the fucking person on stage that's playing. I don't know why. I just like chose that because I think I just liked. I'm sure at a young age I was like, oh, they're getting attention. That looks badass. I'm sure
yeah,
at 10
exactly.
years old I wasn't like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get girls because I was like, didn't that wasn't really my jam when I was a kid. I was like, oh, girls are gross. But I always wanted to be that person on stage to kind of command an audience and like do that, right? So
No,
like,
it was intoxicating. It was intoxicating, like you said. I didn't seeing them. You want to be able to get up there and have that confidence. I think I was like definitely shy at first. You know what I mean? But like you're saying, like I crave that attention in a way. I think and getting up there and be able to do it. It was like you said. I never thought about, oh, I'm gonna get girls doing this or I'm gonna do that. Like no, it was just something that's like, I love to sing. Here I was so like infatuated with wanting to learn more on guitar and write songs, and then just being able to put them together. I never thought like, oh, I'd be in a band. I heard this music, punk rock, and I was like, I need to do this. I want to do this. Like you said, yeah, I want to do this. I want to make this a career. I don't care. I want to try and tour, stuff like that. And I think that's really what it is, man. I was just really intrigued by seeing these people. Before then, it was like, I was big into sports. It was like I knew I wasn't going to be a professional like athlete, and I see this music, and I'm like, it just grabbed me at the time. I was like, oh my god, I love this. I don't remember ever again in like my life, and I know this sounds terrible, but like man, when I first heard punk rock, it was so exciting. I never remember being so excited about something after that. That's been my life for the last 20 something years. Like I love music.
well, what did you like about it? Like what stood out to you?
I think it was a little scary, you know what I mean? Like I said, like, here's kids with this crazy colored hair, some of them dressed a certain way. Kind of like, it's like that dangerous type thing. And it was different. It was different from everything around me where I grew up. Like my grandparents, my mother was first generation American, so my grandparents were off the boat from Sicily. So like, none of my uncles or aunts listen to that type of music. So for me, it was just so different and it's so catchy. It just kind of grabbed me. I was like, I love this. It's not, because I grew up listening to Springsteen and stuff like that. My dad was a big fan of all that stuff, and he played, like I said, played music, and but it was just something about it, man. It's just the energy, man, the fuck you attitude about it. I was like, and I wasn't like super popular in high school, but I wasn't like a nerd. I was just kind of there.
Well, okay, that's what I wanted to get to because, like, for me personally, and I'm not trying to like steal away, I'm trying to mirror here, like I said. And my thing was that I didn't really find any of my friends until I was in high school, and that's when I met Barker and all my buddies who we're still friends to this day. And that's we together found this music, or more like they found it, and I was kind of like forced to like it, and then I really liked it, and then we were in a band playing. But like prior to that, growing up, I never, like you said, I never fit in anywhere. And I was like I could be cool with people in like, quote unquote, the popular side and like the non-popular side, but I didn't really have anyone to hang out with. So I saw it when I was gonna start playing music, like I was gonna make the group that like, not like make the group, but like I was gonna be just putting myself out there as is and create my own group, I guess, and just be like, all right, this is my thing, and maybe I can like meet some friends through this, which I love. That's why I love going to the shows. So like for you growing up, you just said that you kind of were like, kind of in the same thing where you were right in the middle. You didn't really have either side to go to.
Exactly, man. Is that's exactly how it was. Like I always tell that story. It's like I wasn't like super popular, but like I wasn't like what they would call like a nerd, But I wasn't like a nerd. I wasn't super popular. I was just kind of there. And then, like I said, mentioning I went to Catholic school, right? So now here I am, like 15, 16 years old. You have to wear a uniform in the inner city, right? Very diverse school. A lot of African American kids, a lot of Hispanic kids, and the kids I grew up with were like super like Italian, this and that, from like the Italian area of Trenton. No one was listening to the type of music that me and Torres were listening to. Maybe like 4 or 5 kids in our high school. Like Big Dave was there with us. He was a year older, and we had a couple of friends like Mark from Speed Bump. He was there, and that's how we knew we were going to be friends with him. I can tell you a little story about that. Like
Yeah.
junior year, we're taking like your final exams, right? Me and Torres and a couple of our girlfriends from Catholic school, we're like, yeah, we're gonna bleach our hair. I want to bleach my hair like Billy Joe Armstrong and Fat Mike. You know what I mean? So we bleach our hair, and I kid you not, I go to school the next day, Doyle, and one of the nuns is like, Chris, what's wrong with you, Chris? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, what? Why did you do this to your hair? Do I need to take you up to like the guidance counselor? Are you okay? Or are you doing drugs? I'm like, no, I just bleached my hair. It's it. Summertime's coming up. I said, sorry, it's a punk thing. I mean, I like music. This is the people I look up to, that they do the same thing. I think it looks cool. Or she's like, oh my God, like that's what I'm trying to say. Though. It wasn't a thing like it is now. Like, or even in like
Yeah.
a few years after we started playing bands, you know what I mean? Where like punk rock was like in your living room when we were our age. When you did something like that, like bleached your hair or wear like spikes or have a tattoo, they're like, what's wrong with this kid? You know what I mean? Does he have problems? Is he doing drugs? Is he doing this? So, I never forget, me and Torres, the same thing. We got that. And then we see Mark from Speed Bump, and he's like this little, Filipino kid, and he's got super spiky bleach blonde hair. And I'm like, I'm going to go talk to this kid. He had like Green Day, he had Green Day patches, right? So that's what it was like me, Torres, our buddy Matt Grausa, who didn't play in bands, but, he listened to punk music. So that's how you knew who the punks were. You had your little JanSport, and you had like your Green Day patch or your Rancid patch or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go talk to that dude, talk to him in a lunchroom or something like that. Yeah, like I said, growing up where we grew up, it was kind of you kind of latched on to like the few people that had like the same taste as you, I should say, like in liking punk music, because it wasn't a thing there, especially in Trent at the time.
Well, that was the thing, is like that was, I mean, I remember we were freshmen in high school and I heard of Green Day or Offspring when they started coming around. When I heard the name Green Day, I just thought, like, I thought they were like a hippie band or something, which I didn't. I was like, oh, Green Day. This sounds like fucking the Grateful Dead, because that was really only my reference. Other than that, prior to that, it was the whole grunge thing, which is what I got into, which really opened my eyes to music that to me made fucking sense, right?
No doubt about it, man.
That was the first time I heard music where I was like, oh, this isn't this. There's something about this where there's a foundation that makes sense, and then that led to like the whole punk rock thing. But when I heard Green Day, I just thought, and then the kids around me, they were starting to dress in that, which is now or had become the whole Pac Sun catalog, basically, with
Yeah,
the
exactly.
baggy jeans and the tight shirts and shit, which they marketed. But prior to that, they were going to Salvation Armies and buying this shit. When I first heard of it, I was just like, I don't really get this. But luckily, I got into a group of friends who were into it. So then I was like, oh, okay, like I understand what this is now. But you would see other people that would dress like you kind of and differently than other people, and you'd walk up to them and be like, it's like you could start that conversation and know that you were on the same page.
Exactly, man. I never understood I used to give. I don't know if you guys remember Go Real Slow. They were a little younger than we were, but they
I
were out of
remember
Bordentown, and
I
they
remember the name. I remember, and I know we've played a bunch of shows with them.
yeah. So my buddy Chris Henley, who was the lead singer of the band, he was a few years younger than me. And Chris was a good dude. And it's funny you say Pac Sun, because after Yermomlluvus broke up, I'm like 20, 21, and I go to work at Pac Sun, and Chris is working with me. He's probably like 17 or 18, and he used to wear the Jenko jeans, and I'm like, what the hell are you wearing, man? There's Jenko. That's not. I was like, that's not fucking punk rock, man. I mean, go buy yourself some fucking Dickies, man. You know what I mean? Do something like, what is that look? But I always used to tease him about it. But he was a good kid, man. We're still friends, and we talk on the Facebook all the time. But I always tell him like, man, what are you wearing? And it was funny because we had a manager who was older than me, who I, later on became good friends with as you get into like the drinking age. My buddy Alf Bartone, who was in X
Yeah,
number
X number
five.
five. Yeah.
Exactly, man. So I was really good friends with Alf, and like remember going to see his band for the first time after I'd played in bands. I was like blown away. I was like, holy shit, man, these guys are amazing. But that was it. It's kind of starting from, like you said, like starting from like going to local shows and kind of building up and playing in a band, and then like meeting some of my friends that were older friends that like kind of took me into like the whole New Brunswick scene afterwards, in between like Yermomlluvus and like my bands later on. Like that was kind of how built up like a ton of great relationships, and just seeing like, wow, New Jersey. People don't understand. I tell them to this day, I'm like, you guys don't even understand like how spoiled we were. I go, there were so many good bands from the day, like from
Yes.
when I was like 16 until like 30 something. But yeah, that pop music was crazy.
So talk about like Yermomlluvus, and because like talk about you guys starting to play shows and like what you were writing about, or how you kind of figured out like I don't know, like what you wanted to write about and like what you were kind of getting out of it at the time.
Now, Your Mama Love Us, I was the singer, but Anthony was the principal songwriter, man. He was kind of like doing the whole Pete Wentz thing. He wasn't up for singing, but he was a great, I thought he wrote great pop songs. And for us, it was kind of like, again, coming into that scene, like the earlier stuff, because we didn't record it in a ton of stuff. We had a couple demos. The earlier stuff was definitely very early Green Day influence. A lot of songs about love, heartbreak, and stuff like that.
I feel some bands were writing about heartbreak before they actually went through it, right? Did you actually go through it, or you're going, oh, these bands are writing about this. I'm gonna write about shit that doesn't exist yet, but I know I want to go through this.
No, that's a great question, man. I guess it's like maybe less like the heartbreak, but more the wanting. You know what I mean? Like wanting someone that didn't want you, type of deal. You know, like you never even dated them, but you were infatuated with them and you wanted to date them, and you're like, she ain't gonna. Especially where we were from, like she ain't gonna date me. I'm like a punk rock kid, and she's what she is. You know what I mean? And
That's a good fucking point. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of stuff like that was kind of like wanting these girls, and they're like, but at the same time, they would be intrigued by you a little bit. I never forget like me and Taurus at 16 and 17 years old with his bleached hair, and we're in class, we're like half asleep because we jumped the train in New York to go see the Vandals at like Coney Island High, and running into Tim Armstrong and Royce from the Suicide Machines when we were young kids. And
Whoa.
these girls never left Trenton. They were like, what's up? What do you guys do? Why you look so tired? Blah, blah, blah. We tell them, they'd be like super intrigued by it. But at the same time, they were like scared to kind of jump in that and maybe date you because you were so different. You know what I mean? So it was kind of funny. It was kind of like that. You look back on it now and you're like, yeah, they definitely would have hung out with us. But it was just like the whole pressure of high school, and is he cool enough? Is he popular enough? So
Yeah, that's right. There were a lot of bands out there that were kind of like writing these ideas of the person that they wanted from across the room, right? Like making up this whole thing of how it would be, but they never got like metaphorically the balls to go up to them and ask them out. So it's like you should be with me, but I'm a fucking loser, so, I'm never gonna
exactly. Like,
ask
I
you
mean,
out.
a perfect example is like, why do you want him by like Green Day off the earlier albums? You know what I mean? Like he's basically writing a song and saying like, I like you, but you like him. Why do you want him? You know what I mean? Like, what's up with that? So yeah, I think that's what a lot of our stuff was, written about. Like as we got more into playing in like the few years we were together, like then we hear like MXPX, and as we can play a little bit better and try and play a little bit faster, try and play like work our sound off of that. You know what I mean? I love Mike Herrera, dude. I always loved Mike Herrera. I loved his lyrics, loved his voice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I would say that those like Green Day and MXPX at the time were like our two biggest influence in songwriting. So I would definitely say you're definitely right, Mike, with the like, hey, was I heartbroken, or was it just like, hey, that's what I listened to, and you're wanting someone and you're kind of writing the song based off of that because you can't have that person,
Well,
or you never did.
well, that was the thing. Is like you never asked. I always look, not always look back. I sometimes I'll just think back and you reminisce and like high school stuff. And there was like one girl that I thought was super hot back in high school, and I always wanted to talk to her, but I always thought like, man, she'll never talk to me. I'm a fucking loser. But I'm the one who told myself that.
Exactly.
And none of us just tried to just go, I mean, not say none of us, I'm sure there's a percentage out there that did, but that we wrote these songs about, from a guy's perspective, we wrote songs about girls that we were, longing for just for whatever reason, either they looked hot or I don't know. I didn't really have like a personal, like some kind of connection with this person other than the fact that they were attractive. But you'd write, it's more like you wrote songs about how much you were talking yourself out of it. And it really was never that person's fault, ever. It was just you being like, oh, wow, I'm actually just a giant fucking pussy because I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Exactly.
fucking
No,
ask them
that's
out.
exactly what it was, though. I mean, you nailed it on the head. It's like, I don't know if she liked me or she would have liked me because I never had the balls to go up to her and say like, hey, what's up,
Right.
and kind of open up that communication and saying like, hey, I like you, and come check me out. I mean, I never forget, like we had some of the super popular girls come out to like a show that Dave threw, and they were like super impressed by that, and it was cool. But again, like it was that type of thing where it was just like in our little area of New Jersey, in that little in Trenton in the inner city, like we weren't like the popular kids. So they'd want to come hang out and party, but then like they couldn't be like, oh, I'll date you. You're my, oh, I want to be your girlfriend. It's like that just because we didn't fit in that whole scene of back home, like our hometown and where we grew up. So, like I said, being able to get to escape and go off to like North Jersey and watching shows and playing shows up there was kind of like, oh man, like here it is. Here's a group of kids that are like minded. You know what I mean? And like you said, Doyle's like, it was just so cool to just go out there and make all these relationships with all these like minded punk rock kids and be like this and going back home, like, all right, cool. There really are people out there. It's just unfortunately not where we're growing up.
They call pork roll by the real name, Taylor Ham, and we'll never
No,
fit in.
yeah,
They'll never
got
accept us
That was
because we're from
that was the
South
only
Jersey.
downfall of North Jersey is that they
Uh,
don't know how to pronounce it. But
Well, how did you guys start to hear about North Jersey bands? Like, just because them coming down to Trenton, or did you guys go up there to North Jersey shows first? Because you were going to New York City, which is, now that I haven't said that out loud, it's such a complete fucking disconnect from what North Jersey was. Like, that was night and day. New York was New York, and everything else was completely different.
that always struck me as kind of funny too. Yeah, because here we were, you know what I mean. We saw these kids that eventually went on and did quite well, right? But at the
Yeah.
time, like when we were playing in that scene, like there was no scene within the city. Like they weren't having bands like our style of music playing unless they were like a super big band. I always thought it's kind of funny too, like you said, like that whole New Jersey pop punk scene, North Jersey, all these great bands. You may go to like what's it called? It's not Staten Island, Long Island, and play, right? Play
Yeah.
out there, but like never in the city proper.
No.
So it was a weird disconnect. But as to your first question, I think we just kind of lucked out, like I said, like playing. I thought that was our first show, and Yermomlluvus was that. I'm pretty sure it was that gig in Heightstown where you guys were all playing, and just seeing all these really awesome bands. You know what I mean? And then, just linking up and becoming great friends with Boxcar. Like even if we weren't playing, man, like Derek and
Yeah.
those guys, just jump in the van. Let's go. We're going to North Jersey. We're gonna drink some beers on the way up, and we're gonna play music and hang out. And
I was just gonna say that because you guys always rolled up as this like thick crew, and it would be you and Boxcar, and then Dave would always be with you guys.
of course,
And
yeah.
it was like my favorite thing ever when you guys would roll up and then come out of that fucking brown van. It was a brown van first, right? And then it was like the white van, right? Was the
Oh no,
brown
no,
van?
they had the white van, like, which was like a work van first, right? They just had like a couch thrown in there, and then they
Yes.
their way up to like a nice conversion van with like the captain chairs and all that in it. But
That was
yeah,
it.
man, they like listen, great friends, love those guys. They like to me, man. When I saw them, I was blown away, dude. Like Derek he was it, dude. Like
Yeah.
very good friend of mine for years, even after that. But when I first saw this dude with these dreads and he fucking was playing like he was such a good guitar player, one till this day. Like, and I owe a lot of my playing and skills to him because I would just sit at his house and be like, Derek, like I didn't know how to play a fucking octave until he showed me. That's how raw I was. I was like, how do I do that? And we would just sit down and drink beers and we'd play along to albums. He would show me how to play like an octave or something like that. And and at the same time, he's like over here playing fucking jazz chords too. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not even gonna attempt that. But that's how like Derek and Newman and all those guys were. They weren't snobs about it. They were always so cool. They kind of like opened up and took us. We were a few years younger than them. They kind of opened up their arms and took us into like their little brothers, man. And always give them love for that, dude. You know what I mean? They showed us that world.
But you brought up a great point is that the same thing was happening all over. It's almost like how every little kid knew what the code was for Contra to get 30 lives. Remember that with the
Yes, there. Yep. Up, down, left, right.
BA star whatever it was. Like
Got it, dude. Yeah.
everyone kind of knew that, and the word this like that would just spread across the globe or whatever, or however far that went without anyone having internet. But we were doing the same thing. Like I can remember watching Barker sitting with Josh from Humble, and they would be showing each other stuff. Like we'd be sitting in a mall parking lot, and Josh would always keep this like weird ukulele with him at all times because he just was always writing music, and him and Chris would just sit there and throw ideas back and forth, and they wouldn't teach each other music, but they would say like, "Here's a song I'm writing," and the other
Kind
one
of throw like ideas off each other type of thing. Like, what do you think type
yeah.
deal?
Like, oh,
Yeah,
here's the chorus, here's the verse I'm writing, here's the bridge, and they would be like, holy shit. But you guys were doing the same fucking thing, or we'd get together and it would just be like either get beers or just not get beers and just go sit somewhere because we had nothing else to do because we were in
exactly,
21 and just
exactly.
teach other music and then grow off of that. And then like that would actually better our songs because then did you ever find that when you started playing shows and you guys were playing Boxcar that you'd watch the songs that Derek was writing and try to compete, not like compete in a negative way, but try to write a song like he was writing or try to better a song he was writing?
Oh man, no doubt about it, man. Like I like even like you guys or humble beginnings, like seeing all you guys and saying like, man, these guys are so good, man. Like and seeing like Chris Del Vecchio from Humble
Oh,
Beginnings like
Jesus Christ, yeah.
do a sick triple beat. You know what I mean? I'm just like, what the fuck, man? That kid's good. You know what I mean? Like wanting to play songs that were faster, but we had to kind of like build ourselves up to being that good. Like we couldn't do that right away. So there was kind of a small little, what do you call it, in the few years we were together, where you saw a little bit more of the chops come together because we're starting to learn more things. You know what I mean? Like learn how to do different things. Our drummer was getting a little bit better. We were getting a little bit better as songwriters. But oh no, definitely looking at like those guys and definitely you guys, like not to say just because you're on here, like I said, like you guys definitely in that scene were one of my favorite bands. It was like Lane Meyer, loved Humble Beginnings. May have never told him that at the time, but kind of everyone was like man, those fucking guys are good, man. Like remember when their EP first came out, being like, my God, that's a fucking great album. And when you guys first put out, your CD, it was like, man, this is a great CD. And then our friends up in, Old Bridge, my buddies, the Youth Ahead, who were
Yeah.
awesome to, what I mean, we played a ton of shows at Cheesequake Firehouse with those guys and Jay and Sean, you know what I mean? Love them, dude. Would run into them all the time years later, at different shows and just kind of doing what you're doing now and kind of reminisce and talking about that. Like you said, not like like I want to write a better song than you, but in like a good, like competitive, man, I want to write songs as good as these guys are,
Yeah,
as
that's a
catchy as
great way
that. I
to
mean,
put it.
I want to write something that good. Like I'll never forget, Doyle. What the hell, man? There was that one song you used to sing. Uh, I loved it, dude. Was it "Fuck You and Your Boyfriend" or was that a 52 pickup song or something? Summer, man. You play the bass. Here alone again.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fucking your boyfriend.
happy. That's a fucking. Remember hearing that song for the first time? Like, fuck. That's a great fucking song, man. I want to write something that good. I want to write something that like it was a song like that like you listen to it and it just got stuck in your head, man. You know what I mean? And you just be like going throughout the day and you're singing that song, like, my God, that song so catchy. I want to write something that good.
But it's like I don't know, I kind of take like a psychological approach to these questions sometimes. It's like kind of dig a little bit deeper. It's like what did you really want to get out of it, right? Like did you did you want to have someone have the song stuck in their head or did you want to have that song be like a hit that got you out of your town? Because you talked about how you grew up and going to like a Catholic school and then you're in the middle of Trenton. Like, did you want to get out of there, or did you like what was your I don't know, was like any of that tied into it of like writing music?
Oh, no, but most definitely, man. Most definitely. Like I said, I mean, I didn't go to college. I just did Yermomlluvus, and then that didn't work out. But you're right. Like I did want music to be my thing. I wanted to go out and tour, and we're lucky enough to do like one proper little tour with this band called L Second Hand. There you go. There's a South Jersey band, L Second Hand.
Second, I have
Um,
no idea who that is.
yeah, they used to play a lot. They were a little older than us, man. They had some good stuff, and they took us on our first tour. It was supposed to be funny story with that. It's supposed to be Boxcar. And then Boxcar got, for lack of better words, a better offer to go on tour.
Is that when they went with Donuts and Glory?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly
Okay.
what it was. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And then they're like, listen, take our friends band. And they knew us. They're like, yeah, we really like those guys. We'll take them out.
Was that your first tour?
Yeah. Yeah. That was like the only like full, like actual tour like Your Mama Love Us did. Like I did with that band. Yeah. But it
Where'd
was
you
eye opening, like you said, man, to get out. Where did we go? We went Jersey, Virginia, West Virginia, I think like Pennsylvania and back. So it wasn't like a really big tour, man. But for us at the time, I was like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? We're getting out, we're playing to strangers, and I'll never forget the first show. Like out of the blue, like not even knowing, like our van breaks down and we get there, and I can't even tell you, Doyle, if we played the fucking show or not, because that's how long ago it was. But Link 80 played. Like I don't know if they like if we got on the show. I don't remember if we ended up playing like a small set or like they showed up in the same. It was like Pottstown, Pennsylvania, where like Yingling's from. And I don't know how they ended up there, but they ended up like taking our place or like we like shared a set, and that was pretty cool. I'm like, holy fuck, I love you guys. Like, what the hell are you doing here? They're like, yeah, we're just on tour. We need a gig, and that was it, man. But it was like you said, it was eye opening.
Was that their with their first singer, or was that when Ryan
That
joined?
was no, that was with the singer, the Danielle Steele. What was his name? The Nick, I believe, Nick 80, I believe
Yeah,
was his name.
Nick. That's right. Yeah, because I interviewed Adam from Link 80. Those guys were just, I mean, it because I remembered when we played with them as well, and that was like the thing. Like you remember them just being on Asian Man, and then they had that video on whatever the comp was, the cinema, whatever comp. I've been fucking these up lately. But when you see that, when it's like you buy a comp, you see a band, you see they're on a label that you know of, which was Asian Man because of
Of
Slapstick
course.
and
Yep.
all those other bands, and then so then when you see them in person, you're kind of thinking like, holy shit, which is hilarious because it's like you're treating them as if you would have seen fucking Nirvana or Pearl Jam or like whatever the MTV bands
Exactly.
were, where you're putting the pedestal. But they were such fucking cool guys where that made sense. So they're just like, yeah, we're just, I don't know, we're on tour. We're doing this shit like you are. And you're like, what? Like, we're equals kind of.
It was cool, man. And like I said, like even in this the small time we were together, like we got to play with some really great bands like that, like Link 80, Dillinger 4, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who else do we play? Like Discount, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we were all on the fucking road at the same time, man. Like, just scattered.
It was wild, man. But like you said, you did because like you said, I mean, back then there was no internet really. With internet wasn't really that big of a thing. There weren't like fanzines online as much, and it was just kind of like you see these bands. They were on these compilations. They're on these labels, and then you see them in person and you play with them. You're like, well, fuck that dude's really normal. He's super cool. I'll never forget like being from Jersey. That same day, our buddy Adam was on tour with us, just kind of helping out like roading and stuff. And I'll never forget one of the guys in Link 80 was like freaking out because he was wearing like a pretty sick of it all shirt, and he wouldn't stop. He's like, dude, I'll give you like four of our shirts, CDs. I want that shirt, and he literally traded him the shirt off his back because the guy wanted this the sick of it all shirt so bad, man. Just like crazy shit like that. You know what I mean? It was pretty funny, but
But we all like had the same appreciation for this shit, even not knowing each other.
yeah, no, totally.
When you guys went on your first tour, I'm kind of like staying around that for like a minute. Did you guys like what did you use? Did you guys have a van back then, or did you just have your cars?
We ended up Anthony ended up purchasing like a kind of like a beat up like dark blue Ford Econoline work van, and we kind of did like with the boxcar thing, just kind of like threw some couches in it and some things, and built up a little like loft to put like the drum cases, all that stuff in there, and any amps and stuff like that. Yeah, just jumped in and did our thing, man. Drove that thing all over New Jersey and again on tour in Pennsylvania, and it was it was pretty wild, man. But it is now I think about it, I'm like, man, it was a death trap. We were just nuts, but did what you had to do because you wanted to play so bad. You know what I mean?
But we had just had like no fear. It was just kind of like we have to slam on the brakes. I'm sure the couch will be there, even though it's not bolted in at all.
Exactly. It's like made you feel so official when you had that van. You know what I mean? Like I
Oh
feel official.
hell
I
yeah,
got a van, bro. So
dude!
so
Pulling
it
up
was
to
pretty
a
sweet.
show when you walked out of your van, even if it was a giant piece of shit, people were like, whoa. And then everyone would be like, we're gonna hang out in the van. And you just
Yeah,
like you'd go into the parking lot and there was no lights because it was a cargo van or whatever. And then you'd open the door and people were just sitting there smoking cigarettes or drinking and just in the fucking pitch dark. You're
it
like,
was.
how is this
It's
like comfortable?
it wasn't, but we were like you said, we were young and stupid and just wanting to have a really great time, dude. It was good
Ah.
times.
Did you
I
guys
look back.
actually? Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. Go on. You go on.
No, I just look back on those times. I laugh. It was so good. It was just a good time, man. People would envy us if they knew like the stuff that we went through and like like the young adulthood and childhood we had, and that scene was insane.
So I'm on the NJPP SoundCloud. Actually, real quick, I never ask anyone this, but you guys have such a funny fucking band name. Um, how did you guys come up with that?
Actually, Anthony came up with the name, and I never forget, like going back to our ongoing theme here of Pac Sunwear, Pacific Sunwear, and had a hat, right? It was just like some like surfer hat, and never forget he looked in it and he said like your mom. It's like your mom, and it was spelled like that, like Yermon. And he was just like, "Your mama love." I think we were like smoking a joint one day. It was like, "Your mama love us, dude." Yeah, get it. Right now, it sounds about love, like you know what I mean. The girls hoping your mom would like you, and you're just like, "Your mama love us." You'll spell that spelled it that way, and I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's go for it."
I always loved your guys' band name because I thought it was such a great way. And I remember thinking this too, like back then. It's like it's such a guy thing to not like say, but almost kind of how do I word this? It's like all you want to do is like yeah, like for me being a single straight guy, like I want to impress like females. And back then at 18, I want to do that, but I also knew that if I could win over their parents, I was fucking set. But I wouldn't do it in a in like a shitty way. I would be like, if they just like me for who I am, then this is going to be perfect. So I remember thinking about your name was kind of like you guys are up there with like it almost kind of gave you how do I say it? Like without even you guys probably thinking about it, it was like, oh, these guys are surrounded by this aura of kind of like a, yeah, it's like we're cool guys. Like, why
Your
wouldn't
mama
you want
loved
to
me.
fucking,
You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like that little girl
exactly.
you're trying to impress. You're gonna love me, your parents. That's kind of how we went with it. We're like, we saw it was kind of funny. We're like, yeah. And the funny thing was though is I love the name, but the spelling sometimes like people had such a hard time with that spelling. They're like, where mom? I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, spell it out. Your mom will love us. You know, like I guess it's because we were from Trenton and we all had a kind of a weird accent. We say Trenton, we don't enunciate, I guess, but people would definitely have a hard time with the spelling of it and be like, your mom. Oh, and it would kind of get that like light bulb moment. Oh, I get it now. I'm like, yeah.
But it just kind of, again, though, it just really seemed like you guys were up there with a mission, being like, all right, hey, ladies, we're gonna be here, write some cool little sweet pop punk songs, and guess what? You bring us home, and your parents are, your mom especially, that she's gonna dig us, and
Press the mom, man.
you should probably date all of us,
That's it. We should probably all go out, but
all of us, all three of
oh, we
us,
should
and
all
you.
just go out with each other. But just funny, like you said, like mean like Joe. I remember Joe Pulito as a little kid that would be at our shows. He's gonna laugh at me if he listens to it, like because we can't remember the name of that firehouse, but he'd be at every one of those firehouse shows, up front. And then later on, I'd see him at like the record store, and he's like, "Hey, you're Chris from Your Mama Love Us. You're Chris from Your Mama Love Us." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up, man? How are you?" I remember him and his girlfriend at the time, and always talked to him. And that kind of like, years later, we started a band together. It's just funny how things happen, and you see these kids, and
What band were you in with him?
we had a band called Downbound City like about 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, you should check us out. Where we got a couple of EPs on Spotify.
I didn't even know you guys had a fucking band together. What is it again?
Downbound City.
Downbound City?
Hmm.
Bound, like Bound City, like the
Hmm.
movie Bound.
Like, yep, exactly.
Let's see. No, I don't see it on there. Is that all one word?
Downbound City should be two words. Downbound and then City. Downbound.
Yes. Jerry Maguire, So Long Now, 29. Is that right?
That's them. Mhm.
I would hope you know the fucking name of the songs you wrote.
That's definitely. I was like, that's definitely those tunes.
Downbound City for people listening. Wait, who's singing?
That's me, man. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I didn't listen to it yet, but I just want to know like what the makeup was because Joe was in 37 Slurp, and I interviewed him. He was like what the fuck was he? Like number 9, episode number 9 on the podcast, something like that. He was like
I
super
think so.
early.
Super early, definitely.
Yeah,
It's a
he
good
was like
episode.
way back in the day. Guys doing the Lord's work, as they
Is
always
it?
say.
He definitely is, man, with all that stuff, and he loves it. Like that's his thing. But yeah, no, Downbound City. That funny is it's me, vocals, guitars, Joe on bass, Anthony Verderami, who was the drummer of 37 Slurp, and then our buddy Brandon Rosemark was the original guitar player. Then our buddy Mike took over on the second recording because Brandon moved to, funny enough, North Carolina, like you did.
So you guys have a couple things recorded here, but you never did a full length. So you've got the couple songs that were on the Trash the CD comp. Was that, and then you got the We Belong Together. It's on a demo tape looking, and then you also have that on looks like a 3-song EP.
Correct. I think we initially recorded that, and I know that Steve Papp, Steve from Shower Goats, he put
Yep.
that out on a Burgerama compilation CD that he was putting together. And then the three songer was a tape, was just like a tour demo that when we went on that tour, we made that. And, I mean, we did well. We like, back then you're just like throwing together tapes on like cassette tapes and making paper cutouts. And we made like
Yeah.
200 and they sold out like in the first night in West Virginia. Boom. Like
Holy
we're like,
shit.
fuck. We're like, fuck, we didn't expect that. You didn't go to the rest of the tour. They're like, do you guys have any CDs or tapes? We're like, no, sold out. They sold out the first night. We're new to this. we're new to this. We apologize.
How many tours do you guys actually go on?
Just the one, man.
Just the one?
Yeah, and then just a lot of, like I said, a lot of North Jersey, South Jersey, Central Jersey, out to Southampton, Pennsylvania a lot. We had some buddies that we played with there a lot. And then I guess Cheesequake Firehouse would be still considered like Central Jersey-ish, out there in Old Bridge with the Youth Ahead guys. But yeah, man, that was it. Like I said, we weren't in a band that long, like 2 years, you know what I mean? Like we ended up playing, people start going off to college and stuff like that. And that was it. Kind of a deal. It was kind of short and sweet, but it was like my foray into punk rock, the beginning of a long, crazy career with different bands and stuff. But it was awesome, man. Like I wouldn't change it for the world.
Were you kind of bummed, like, or not even bummed, like, yeah, we'll answer this after the first part. How did you guys eventually, because you guys started off, you're playing some local shows. We'll kind of break that down a little bit too. So then you go on the one tour, and then eventually everyone's going away. So you're like, all right, we're just going to dissolve this. So whose decision was it to stop the band, and were you bummed out afterwards?
I was definitely bummed out. I guess it was kind of like a decision of all ours. Like, funny to say at the time, like, me and Anthony wanted to tour more, and we would blame our drummer Mike. We can say this now because we're all still friends, but
Fuck that guy.
yeah, fuck Mike. He'll hear this. I have to send him a link, but no, you know how it is. Like, and then Mike fell in love for the first time, and funny enough, like he lives in North Carolina too, with his wife, who is a good friend of ours that he met while he was in Yermomlluvus. He would have never met her if he wasn't in Yermomlluvus, but he like married his high school sweetheart. Yeah.
Well, explain that. How did that happen? How would he have not met her because of not being in your
So
band?
we all went to high school together, but she was kind of like our friend. He didn't really know her. Like they didn't talk at all. You know what I mean? They didn't kind of know. Like they knew of each other, but like his wife Chris was a friend of mine and Anthony's. And she was one of the few friends of ours that listened to punk rock too. You know what I mean? So like, oh, she's this pretty girl. You're like, oh, she's gonna be our friend because she knows what's up. The summer after our senior year, we started playing this music, started the band. The girls were always hanging out. They would come to all the shows with us, and yeah, eventually romance was in the air, and boom, that was it. They kind of met each other, started dating, and that was it.
You're playing the soundtrack to their love on stage.
Yeah, totally. But it's so funny. Look at it now, man.
You guys always had like there was you guys, Boxcar, and there was like three or four girls who always rolled with you guys, right? Am I thinking of this right? Wasn't there
I
always
think
like
so.
it was like all of you guys were friends, but they would always roll in the van with you guys to shows? Because one of them, like you said, I thought she was the one who did the Trash the CD.
Now Molly definitely hung out a lot. Molly was the one, and she probably would have been with us a lot coming up in the van with Boxcar because she was such a big part of the scene down where we were from, throwing shows and putting together compilations and stuff like that. But yeah, she was probably definitely there a lot, coming up with us in the Boxcar van at the time. She was super cool.
I should really do an episode that talks to everyone who did all these comps because I remember that one. There was the White Powder Donuts. I mean, Stein won't talk about. Well, he won't do an interview, but Brian Granick, he was part of Umbilical, so he talked about it a little bit. But there was like the Happy Little Trees comp. You remember that, the Bob Ross cover?
Yeah. There's some great compilations. Like there's like always
Oh
someone
yeah.
releasing something with all these great local bands, and that was another way how you found out about bands, right?
Oh, totally.
Like you could go to a show and you pick up this comp and you're like, man, that band kicks ass. You know what I mean? Like check them out.
Well, it was like it was different steps though, right? So there'd be the local ones where a couple of them, because basically it's almost like the comps became every local show that was out. It'd be the same fucking 10 bands, but just in a different city or town with like one exception of some new band. But then that became a comp because it was the same fucking comp with like all the same fucking bands. And then just a couple of them snuck on there. But then there'd be some great ones where I don't know if it was just the fact that it was during the summer and we were having the best times of our lives, and then you'd pick up, White Powder Donuts or Happy Little Trees or Trashless Comp. But I remember like getting them and leaving a show and putting it in, and it'd be 10, 11 o'clock at night, and it's hot outside, and just driving and just being like 18 or 17 and like completely free, started driving, and you're listening to these songs. And I think that's what made them so great was that just like was kind of captured that moment there, right? Like that time
Totally,
period in
man.
that second. And it was that could have been the thing, like that's why the nostalgia part, I mean, obviously that's so tied into this. But there were some great comps though where what's there some other fucking like when Bigwig would show up with all those fearless comps, right?
Totally. Yeah,
And the
that
serial
was it.
killer compilation that came in. Then
So,
then you listen to that.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's what elevated up to the next level where it went from nostalgia to who the fuck are these bands? Because a lot of them weren't from Jersey, and that's what opened our eyes out or opened our eyes to other bands outside of Jersey. And then then you go to like Hot Topic or a record store, and then you get the next level up, which would be the Fat Record comps and Epitaph comps. So there's always these tiers of
No,
comps
no,
that were
definitely, most
yeah.
definitely, man. And then I would. I mean, at that time, I mean, I'd put New Jersey up against any state, including California, with the scene. I mean, Cali probably being the only one that could have topped it at the time. Even not when I was in bands driving all over the country. I'm like, not no one had a scene like us.
No.
Especially on the level, like you said, where bands kind of grew up. It was so grassroots. You know what I mean? We didn't have like all those record labels like they had out in like California. They built from the ground up. What did you have? Like Drive Through Records kind of started from I don't really know too much, but I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Signing these bands from New Jersey and stuff like that. And
Well, they were from Jersey. They're
yeah,
like
they're
Richard
from
and Stephanie
Jersey.
are,
Yeah,
yeah, they're from there, but then they had their home base out in California. But yeah, you're right. They did just kind of start with like yeah, Mother Mania. That was one of their first. I don't know if that was the first band, but it was an original band that they signed.
definitely one of them. I remember playing with those guys and loving those dudes. Those guys were great, man. I remember being like, oh, these guys are amazing. And they were the best dudes. But yeah, man, it was just kind of funny. Like I said, you know what I mean? Like I said, we didn't have like these homegrown, like, because, the California scene had the California scene out there. And like you said, we weren't New York. So there wasn't like this add on, like, oh, there was Epitaph out there, Fat Records, Nitro, all these labels at the time. And, we were just in Jersey, just like a little grassroots scene that just kept building up, building up, building up. Some labels popping up. Eyeball was in New York, correct?
I think so. New York State or New York City? I don't know. I have wanted to try to get Alex on here, but I
Yeah,
haven't
man.
really tried. I've wanted
Yeah.
to get him on here.
No, I hear you, man. But I mean, he was putting out, like I said, he put out what the humble beginnings and
Yep.
put out some really good stuff. You said Drive Through was doing that for some Jersey bands and stuff like that. So it was cool. Little bands, like, the little labels here and there popping up and putting out CDs of these bands. And it was just great, man. Like I said, I would put that scene up against any scene at the time and say,
Oh
like,
yeah.
this many bands that are this good.
I think the thing that kept that made Jersey work was because it was such a small state. Like you even said it before. I would argue it takes you 3 hours to get from top to bottom. It takes you an hour to get left to right, shore to river.
I'll give you 3 hours. I'll give you 3 hours, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely takes like if you like depending on how far up you are,
exactly.
but you can legit like I won't even drive an hour now to go. I mean North Carolina is fucking gigantic compared to Jersey. There was a brewery that just opened up last Sunday, and my buddy's wife, she goes, "Oh, let's go to that." I was like, First of all, it's Sunday. I'm not fucking driving an hour out somewhere to get hammered and then I'll just drive back." But back in the day, if it took us an hour, if we were in Jefferson, and if Jefferson driving anywhere, it took us like at least 45 minutes. But getting to Trenton, that took us about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get down there.
Yeah,
And we'd be
easily.
like, yeah, we're like, okay, cool. So we go there during the day and we drive back. And it didn't feel like you were going to another fucking country for some reason. Like it felt like you
I
were,
hear that.
yeah, it was like it was doable, and the roads that we drove on were so normal because we kept driving on them all the time. That was like you're in fucking autopilot to get there
Exactly,
and
man.
back,
Yeah, you got the Garden State Parkway and the Turnpike. That was it. Boom, boom, boom. You're wherever you want to be.
which is so different compared to being in North Carolina, by the way. Because if I'm driving down to the beach, the road there is so calm that that's probably why I hate the fucking shore in Jersey because it's so
Yeah,
chaotic being on the goddamn parkway when there's like 5 lanes and every asshole's doing like 110. I'm like, this doesn't seem very calming to me. I don't want to be here.
No, I hear that. Texas was like, oh, I think Chris misses traffic. So traffic is probably worse here than New Jersey. You know what I mean? Being in the DFW area, Dallas Fort Worth.
Oh, you're on 35 too. 35 blows
Yeah,
hell.
I'm right. Right. It's man, it's terrible. So 35, yeah, 183, no bueno. But definitely crazy traffic. A lot of people moving to the state. So, but it's cool down here, man. One thing I do miss is the music scene in the tri-state area. You know what I mean? You don't get that as it's good down here, but it's not like back home. So that's the one thing.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not going to any local shows anytime soon, but
No, not at all.
because
Not
you're,
at all.
yeah, I've definitely become way less scared of all this as this has gone on because North Carolina is, I mean, we're not as crazy as Texas. Texas is like, this doesn't exist. Everyone hug everyone all the time and pack into places. My buddy was down in Dallas a couple months ago and he's like, dude, this place, they don't give a fuck. It's like, really?
Yeah, there was pretty lax down here, but you're seeing a lot of stuff come out about this stuff, and they're like, well, we botched the numbers here. We've been adding this, like, so it's all. I don't know what to believe anymore, dude. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna live my life and
Dude,
do what I got to do until this ends.
I was talking to someone the other day, and I know we're kind of getting off topic for a second, but like I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, "Man, I never go anywhere." I was like, "Really?" Every fucking weekend, I'm like, I'll hit up like six different spots. I'm just like wear a mask, wash my hands, sit fucking far away from people and shit. But I've definitely become a little bit more loose with like slapping, high fives and like really randomly kind of side hugging someone. Like a friend of mine, she came up to me at a bar on Sunday. She's like hugged me like from the side. I was like, oh, so I guess we're hugging now. Like, what the
So
fuck?
are we doing this again? What's going
Yeah,
on?
I was like, we guess we're not in a pandemic anymore. But anyway, so jumping back in the scene. All right, so before we go, are there any just like random stories, mostly about Boxcar, that would be hilarious? Or,
Oh my
I don't know,
God.
like any random things. I mean, sure, it's not going to be crazy where it'd be, I don't know, insanity, but there's always just some story that someone remembers where I'm like, I did not expect that to be
Trying to
told.
think, man. There's probably so many. So there's probably so many crazy stories about those guys that that I even remember off the top of my head right now, man. But
Yeah.
if I have some time, I'll have to like email you or Skype you sometime and give you some random ones. But definitely so many just crazy trips in that van, man. Just packing tons of people into that van and going to shows all over New Jersey. It was just wild. These guys are crazy.
Well, it wasn't like, I mean, the thing is like it wasn't so nuts where it'd be like a Motley Crue story where you have a book that's about people
No,
doing heroin and stuff like that.
no.
But
Yeah.
there was, they come back to life and like killing their friends in a car wreck and not going to jail and
Yeah.
shit. But like,
Yeah. Great
but
book,
it
by
was,
the way. But
yeah, it's amazing. But like there was just, I think the simplicity of the crazy time more about being kids in high school who didn't really know where we fit, showing up at this Legion Hall and then finding every single person there you fit in with in 1 second. Like in one shot, you realize that I went from not really fitting in anywhere to fitting in everywhere with everyone in this room instantly. Even like you didn't get to talk to them at the time, you knew that you could and they'd be open to it.
yeah, I mean that's what it was with a band like with Boxer at the time. Just jumping in them being a little older and them just being so welcoming. Because you walk
Yeah.
into like a local show and you're like for the first time you see this band and everyone loves them, right? And then they're just like, hey, dudes, let's hang out because we're all from the same area. And then
Right.
they kind of
Yeah.
like taking you in like as their people, man. It was awesome. You know what I mean? You're like, here's these guys that I look up to, and they want to hang out just on the side, and there's no egos, there's no nothing. Like you said, it's like, oh wow, I'm home. These are my people.
Yeah.
That's it. And like I
Exactly.
said, having those relationships forever, man. Like I said, like building it from there. Like I was in a band, with Brendan. We had a band. It was me, him, and do you ever listen to None More Black?
Oh yeah. I love that first record.
Yeah, so yeah, speaking of the first record, so it was me, Brendan, my buddy Jeff Shevchuk was the guitar player in our band, Minnesota's Calling,
Jason's brother.
Jason's brother.
Yep.
It was me, Brendan, Torres from Yermomlluvus on bass, and then yeah, Brendan on drums, dude. And we put out like
What?
yeah, yeah. It was funny because we put it out on like we just put it out on like a online label that was based out of North Carolina called Death to False Hope Records. A buddy of ours, Scotty Sandwich, works down at like he's definitely a sound guy. He was in
Scotty
a band.
sandwich. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
man. Yeah, Scotty Sandwich. He's in a band called Almost People out there in North Carolina, and worked at what's what's like a pretty big venue? And I think kind of in the same area as you do. I think it's in I want to say Mako or something like that, man. Mako Lounge or
Uh,
what's kind of like the big venue like punk bands would play, like bigger punk bands.
there's the Ritz, Kings, Lincoln Theater. The big ones are Walnut Creek and Redhead Amphitheater.
Might have been the Ritz, the Moto.
Motorco's in Durham.
Yes, that's the place he like did sound there, and he had like this like this kind of like pay what you want label, man. And we were just like, he's like, I want to put this stuff out, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, do it, dude. We were just doing it to have fun and put it together and play music.
Is that album on Spotify as well?
I don't think it's on Spotify. I'll get you some of that because it was on Death to Falls Hope for a while. And you could just kind of download it as you go. And then I think he kind of got rid of that thing because we ended up putting out like a 4 or 5 songer on there and then like a 7 inch and which Jason from Kid Dynamite actually sang on a couple of the songs back up. So that
What?
was yeah, that
That's
was sick. And that's the same. Like you make these relationships with these people that were like, heroes of yours and you're friends with them. You know what I mean? Like I'm friends with Jason. Like we talk to Phillies all the time, stuff like that. His brother was one of my good friends, so it's kind of wild. Like I said, like that. And that's all because of this NJ pop punk scene. You know what I mean? It got me into this scene to which I later went on. Like maybe I wasn't as prevalent in that scene, but I went on and played in bands with people and played with bigger bands, like bands that I loved growing up, like being in Minnesota's Calling and Downbound City. And I was in like another rock and roll band called Moscow Girls that was less like this pop punky sound as the other two bands, but like playing with bands like Gaslight Anthem before they blew up, playing with Sam I Am, playing with
wow.
uh my buddy's actually putting out a record for who is I love them Shades Apart, dude. I play with Shades Apart,
Yep.
play with Game Face, all these bands I grew up loving in the pop punk scene, and JPP scene, going on and making these relationships in New Brunswick and stuff like that, and linking up with some good dudes and playing some really great shows. But it's all because of what we're talking about right now. It's all because of this scene. I mean, that kind of drug me into that whole area, meeting these just great people.
Well, real quick, so in Downbound City, what would be the song that I'd want to pull into my playlist?
I would pull in. Let me look.
I got Jerry Maguire, So Long Now, 29, Prayers and Spirits, Welcome to My Breakdown. That sounds like that's a great song title.
I would say "Welcome to My Breakdown's a great tune, man. X's
Yeah.
and L's is on there. That's a great one.
Okay.
X's and L's was actually a Minnesota's Calling song that I wrote that we did with that band. But I love "Welcome to My Breakdown." That's a killer tune.
Cool.
Jerry McGuire's a killer one, and then there's another little 3-song EP on there too. They're all great, man. I'm biased, but Challenge Accept is a great tune.
Okay.
Another great one I would
All right.
suggest.
I'll bring that one as well. All right, man. Well, I am going to wrap this up.
Definitely, man.
So two things before we end. First of all, which you've plugged a few things, but it's now that I'm going to tell you to plug whatever, you could say it again, or you could give it to some love to someone else, or you can say plug something else. But what would you like to plug?
No, just go check out Downbound City. Like I said, you're older, you make music, but I definitely think those songs should be heard. Like again, I'm biased, but I think they're up there with any band that's out there touring right now. You should check them out. That's it, man. Really plug in. Go check out this podcast is great, man. I mean, I'm sad to say I didn't listen to as many as I wanted to, and then you asked me to do it. I went, and I'm like, oh, like seeing all these awesome people that I grew up listening to and knowing what they, people that are putting out stuff and seeing all the, it's just different. What's the word I'm looking for? Like smorgasbord of people that you have. I'm like, man. And so, I remember like Joe being on at 9 and then, when you hit me up, I'm like, wow, there's 100 of these and going through it. I'm like, this is insane. This is awesome. So definitely have some listening to do. I'm a big podcast fan too. So, just shout out to you, man, you and Joe. And
That's better.
like you said, the NJPP thing, man, just kind of keeping this thing going on. It's like it's unreal. I love it, man. Like you said, it's just like a trip down memory lane, man. I love seeing all this stuff and listening to all these songs on the NJPP and listening to all these interviews you're doing, dude. So you're doing a great thing and you you're built for this, Doyle. I think you should maybe do an actual documentary about this scene one day because I think it would be pretty rad.
Well, that was kind of like the initial idea, and that's why I started the podcast. I was like, I don't want to spend that much money. But then there's a doc coming out called The Last Scene, and it's all about like it's more about the late nine, like more into like the early 2000s and on. Um, but that it's like the same exact thing that like I was thinking about this like how I started this, and then I was like, so then this guy Kyle Kilday, he basically had the same fucking idea, but he ended up raising money through a Kickstarter, which is what I thought would have been the way to do a documentary. I was like, I probably would have to raise $10,000, spend 3 to 4 years going around to filming this thing. And I was like, I want to do this tomorrow. So I know how to do a podcast. Let me do that instead. And that's how this came about. But then Kyle now he's going around the country or was filming all of this shit for that. So that's in the works.
That's wild, man. And is it about like the NJ pop punk scene, or is it just about the scene in general?
It's about the scene in general. Like he will talk to Jersey bands and bands from the late 90s, but it'll also go into like the early 2000s. So his doc is really that bridge between where we were, and then when it bridged over, some people stayed with it and some people got out of it. And then that's when he went to like Bamboozle and became more of a corporation, I thought.
Oh yeah, yeah. It definitely did. Definitely got a little crazy, but
But so many great bands did come out of the early 2000s and like mid 2000s where he's like talking to them. So it looks really cool. I think I don't know what the website is for that. I think it might be like just look Google The Last Scene and you can check that out.
definitely, man. I
And
definitely.
also, if you get a chance, check out the Jersey Interchange that's been going on. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I actually got to finally catch one of those. I thought
Sick.
it was rad, dude. So good. I mean, I'm a huge Weston fan, and I love James's new band. Actually, you know what?
No, no, not the Quarantunes, not the Quarantunes. The
Oh, I thought that was
actual
the. What is the? So what is the? What is the?
So Jersey Interchange. So Christian, he started have asking pat like old school singers or just bandmates to cover other Jersey songs. So
Oh,
like
I did see that. That's the one. That's the one I was. Joe did that with the Chris Gether dude. They did a Weston song.
yes, yes, it's fucking
So I did
amazing.
hear that. It's yeah, that's fantastic, man. I want to do that, guys. If anyone's out there, I want to cover a song.
I could swear the other day that there was a post, but I know that Christian asked in the Jersey Pop Punk. Are you in that group?
No, I got to get in that, dude.
Jesus
I
Christ,
got to
dude.
get in that.
Will
I'm
you
like,
let
I'm
me?
out of the loop here,
I'm
man.
inviting you this. I'm inviting you right now.
Definitely.
Christopher Pinto.
Oh, by the way, Doyle, it was Derby Firehouse. Big Dave came through.
That's it.
The
God damn
Derby,
it.
yeah, Derby
Jesus
Firehouse.
Christ. I've talked about that exact thing for so many episodes and I'm like, "Oh, that was 2 weeks ago. I don't know anymore. My brain is shot."
Yeah, exactly. Just got the invite, man. I'm stoked. I'm stoked to be a part of this. Oh, this is great, man.
Check that out and then go to the Jersey Interchange on SoundCloud. But like Janet from Avery did a Lane Meyer cover, which I'm biased on because it was fucking great. The Heath cover of Flavor Ice from Bigwig, when we're done, listen to it. He fucking destroys it. It's so amazing. And like Alf did a cover of, I think it was SETI Alpha 6. I forget. It's amazing.
That's brilliant, dude. That is so cool. I gotta listen to all that.
Yeah, it's you'll kind of get you're gonna like lose so much time between if you want to check out any of these podcast episodes, but then like listening to those songs and like going through that whole group and it's amazing.
Going down the rabbit hole, dude. I'm
Yeah,
excited for
total rabbit
this.
hole.
It's gonna be awesome.
All right, man. So last question. We'll wrap this up. Uh, what scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
That's a great question, man. That is a that's a good man. I didn't know there's gonna be a test at the end of this thing. I don't know, just like that's a good like just showing love to everybody, man. Like I never judge anybody off of that. That was one of the great things about the punk rock scene, especially that NJPP scene. Like no one judged you, man. Like you said, it wasn't like high school. You came in, you met all these people, whether you're from North Jersey, Central Jersey, South Jersey, and everyone was super cool. And I think I held on to that, man. I never I try not to be, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I try not to be like, oh, look at this guy or look at this girl. Like, that's one thing I always hold on to, those punk rock ethics of like, hey, man, everyone's a good person until they give me a reason to not think they're a good person. So that's definitely something I think I've held on to from the whole punk rock scene and those punk rock ethos and stuff like that, man. Definitely.